Since this is our first lab, let's start from a blank desktop. Now this is assuming you've seen the videos on how to install SQL and how to set up your labs, and you are set up for Lab 2.0. If that's the case, click the Start button, select Management Studio. Now if that's not there, you can find Management Studio under the SQL Server 2008 Program Group. Click Connect. On the left side of the screen, you will notice several databases that were installed thanks to the setup script of Lab 2.0. Now what we want to do is query a database, so we'll hit this New Query window. SQL Server often holds many databases. When you run a query, you want to know which database you're querying from. You can only use one context at a time, but you can switch as often as you like. So if we were going to look for all of the employees, which database are we pulling from? Well, the database context is set by this drop-down arrow. You can select the database of your choosing. For this lab, we're going to select Beginning SQL Joes to Pros Practice Company, or JProCo. In JProCo, let's look at all of our employees. Type Select Star, hit Enter to drop a line, from Employee, and hit F5 or the red Execute button to see your results. If you hear me say execute the query or run the query, it means essentially the same thing. Here it looks like we have 12 employees. In other words, we have 12 records. How many fields do we have? It looks like we have 7 fields. As expected, our employees have a whole bunch of different last names. The first employee's last name is Adams. The next employee's last name is Brown. Let's take a really common last name. How many employees have the last name that is equal to Smith? Well, let's look for that by adding a where clause. Where, last name, equals, and then type single quote, SMITH, single quote, and then run your query. Notice we get just one record, Sally Smith. How many employees have the last name of Brown? Inside our single quotes, we'll put BROWN and hit the Execute or the F5 key. And again, we get just one employee. Now here we've written out both queries at the same time. What happens if I hit the Execute button when both queries are up? You get 2 result sets. The first result set is the first query looking for all Smiths, and the second result set is the second query looking for all Browns. If we wanted to keep all of this code in front of us but just run the Smith query, what you can do is select just the query you want to run. And this gives me the Smith query. Select this code, and we get the Brown query. Now if we don't select anything, then all of the code in your query window executes. Go ahead and delete all of your code, and let's try a new example. Let's take another look at our entire employee table. Type Select All Fields from Employee and hit the Execute button to run the query. Since I don't have a where, it's going to give me all of the records in the table. Now we can query off the last name, looking for Smith and Brown. We can also query for first name. A common first name is David. Let's look for all the Davids. Type where first name equals single quote DAVID single quote and execute. Looks like we get 2, David Kenson and David Lawning. How about we change the first name criteria to Lisa? Looks like we have only one Lisa. Now let's say your goal was to look for all the employees named Lisa or David. In other words, we're going to find 3 records if we do this. We can put the word or first name equals David. Execute this query, and we'll find all the Lisas or the Davids. and you get a total of 3 records in your result set. Now, the reason you can't put Lisa and David in the same line with an equal sign is because an equal sign looks for one exact match, and not an enumeration or many exact matches. If you wanted to make this query easier to read, there's another operator besides the equal sign that looks for exact matches. Type the word in, followed by a set of parentheses, and separate each exact match with a comma. Execute this query, and you get all the Lisas and Davids. You can keep going. You can find all the Lisas, Davids, and Erics. Single quote, E-R-I-C, single quote. And now we get 4 records. We've done several records from our employee table. What about some other tables in JProCo? Let's look at our locations. Select every field, hit enter, from the location table, and execute it. Looks like we have 4 fields and 4 records. We have a total of 4 locations. Well, great. So far you've told us there's an employee table and there's a location table. Are there more tables? What are they called? How do you research that? Well, if we look on the left in our Object Explorer, we can see the JProCo database is represented by this little yellow cylinder. We expand that, one of its nodes is called Tables. Expand that, and it will list the different tables that you can query from. Select star from employee is a pretty straightforward query. Now, select turned blue because select is a keyword. From turned blue because it's a keyword. Employee is not a keyword, but it worked because employee is a table in the JProCo database, right here. Well, what would be another usable name for a table? We have a location table, and that works just fine. You know what a horrible name for a table would be? What if I name my table from? Look at this. Select star from. That's really confusing. What if I named my table select? That would be pretty confusing for SQL. Let's look at our table listing again. Here is a table called Grant. Okay, let's find all the grants in our company by typing select star from Grant. Uh-oh, Grant is a keyword, and now the query won't run. Hey, we've got all this data in the Grant table. How do we get to it? Well, there's a Grant keyword, and there's also a Grant object. If you want to tell it which one you mean, and it's the object, put square brackets around the table, and it will run just fine. Now here's a question. Can you put employee in square brackets? Yes, you can. You just don't have to. In fact, every object in SQL Server will allow you to put square brackets around it. It's only required if there's a name conflict with a keyword. Time for Lab 2.1, Skill Check 1. Write a query that displays a result set of all records from the current products table inside the JProCo database. Show all fields and all records. When you're done, your screen should resemble the figure you see here. Here's some more skill checks to give you some more practice. Skill check 2 says, in the JProCo database, write a query that shows all records from the grant table. Skill check 3. In the JProCo database, write a query that shows all records from the grant table that have an amount of exactly 21,000. So skill check 3 is similar to skill check 2, but you have to add a where clause. Finally, skill check 4 says, write a query that displays all records from the location table that are in the state of Washington. Washington in this database is represented by a capital W-A. When you're done, your screen should resemble the figure you see here.